William McCrea.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I preface my remarks, first of all, in expressing appreciation to the Secretary of State for Defence in coming to the debate and listening to the major part of the opening part of the debate, and that was deeply appreciated. And certainly we're delighted also that the Shadow Minister is here. And could I thank also the Minister of State for Defence herself for her speech and for the manner in which not only she delivered it, but also her willingness to learn more about the outworkings of the military covenant in Northern Ireland. And that is deeply appreciated. And I can assure both the Minister of State and also the Shadow Minister, who was also speaking, and we appreciate it, they're both of them giving us a very generous offer to come across to Northern Ireland and see what is happening for themselves. That is deeply appreciated, and I want to put that on record, because quite often ministers or shadow ministers can be taken for granted. I don't think that should go without acknowledging it, and I want to say you will be both very welcome in Northern Ireland and in our constituencies. And I know that my right honourable friend has got a base in his constituency, and I have also in my own constituency, and so therefore very, very welcome to come and to visit. Firstly, I would like to pay tribute today to the men and women of our armed forces across the United Kingdom, who daily place themselves in the line of fire, not only for this nation, but for others across the world who need their protection. I want also to pay tribute not just to our regular armed forces, but to the reserve forces. I want to pay tribute to their families, because quite often, like members of Parliament or people, especially in Northern Ireland, who put themselves up out there in the front, many of their families are forgotten about, and yet their families also have paid, many of them paid a tremendous sacrifice and price for their involvement in the forces, the armed forces. In Northern Ireland, we are very proud of the contribution that our reserve forces also make to all elements of the armed forces in the United Kingdom. We are proud that despite the fact that Northern Ireland makes up approximately 3% of the UK population, we regularly provide more than 20% of the reserve forces on operational deployment. This is a great testimony to the long and proud tradition of Northern Ireland's servicemen and women in our armed forces, and is why today in Parliament we must speak up for those from our part of the United Kingdom who we genuinely believe have been denied the full implementation of the Armed Forces Covenant. According to Lord Ashcroft's review, there are significant numbers of Home Service Royal Irish Regiment, Ulster Defence Regiment personnel living in Northern Ireland, and their needs are enduring. The Aftercare Service, which alongside Armed Forces Charity Centre operates a number of Veterans Support Committees, was set up to provide welfare assistance to this group, and it is in the process of reorganising to accept responsibility for all veterans in Northern Ireland. Now, this discreet charitable welfare support is essential to mitigate the difficulties in assessing statutory veteran-related assistance and the much lower profile of veterans in Northern Ireland. Now, the DUP fought hard to secure this service in the period leading up to the disbandment of the Home Service Battalion of the Royal Irish Regiment. The work of various armed force charities and support organisations is to be commended. Their dedication to work with and for our servicemen and women is second to none. I welcome news from the Government that £50,000 of funding has been given to the UDR and Royal Irish Aftercare Service to set up a welfare support network and advisory service for veterans and their dependents in Northern Ireland. However, further charitable support is needed, and I would repeat the calls from the DUP that the Government cooperate with the military charities to establish a fund and fund a treatment and respite centre in Northern Ireland for veterans and armed forces personnel. However, there are limits to what these organisations can achieve without greater government assistance. Subject to clinical needs of others, wounded, injured, sick veterans are entitled to priority treatment in England, Scotland, Wales for conditions that are attributable to their service whilst in the military. However, this has still now been prevented, up to the moment has been prevented in Northern Ireland due to the ongoing security threat from dissident Republicans. However, Lord Ashcroft's review solution to this issue called upon security vetted armed forces champions to be appointed to work within the various agencies to enable and assist security service personnel and veterans and various government departments in Northern Ireland who might be able to offer support to veterans and service personnel, say they are unable to give any form of professional treatment in line with the objectives of the military government because of the restrictions placed upon them by legislation. Now, when the Minister of State for Defence, Personnel and Welfare and Veterans gave evidence to the Welsh Affairs Committee on the 30th of October 2012, and the committee's inquiry into support for armed force veterans in Wales, he was asked if he was aware of the different emphasis being put on different policy priorities in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. His reply was that we have a particular challenge in Northern Ireland because some of the Sinn Féin-run authorities have a particular view of the Covenant and what it represents. So, in Northern Ireland, he said, this area is particularly sensitive and difficult. If this is the case, that the government are unwilling to fulfil their duty and implement the military covenant due to fear of Sinn Féin and nationalist intolerance, then it is time they publicly admitted it. The challenge to the government, the NIO, is whether they will stand up to these restrictive elements and give military veterans residing in Northern Ireland their full rights. This government, when dealing with this issue, should not be frightened nor bullied into backing down to Sinn Féin's demands, which discriminate the very servicemen and women who have protected our nation. This motion before us today is about equal citizenship, equal treatment, equal gratitude for our armed forces, whether they be from England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland or the various regions of the British Commonwealth. All deserve our support, and just because they happen to reside in Northern Ireland should not mean that they are discriminated against.
Will the honourable member give way?
Yes, I'm happy to give way.
Would he add to that also those very brave men and women who reside in the Republic of Ireland and who serve in the armed forces of the United Kingdom?
I absolutely agree with my right honourable friend. I think that we have got to be very sensitive to their needs, and certainly we want to be sure that the protection which we're asking and the service we're asking for those who served because they were from Northern Ireland or any other region of the United Kingdom, we must not forget that the many in the Irish Republic who in actual fact, when it was very unpopular to do so, put their neck on the line in reality, even amongst their own neighbourhood, whenever they joined up and went to fight in Her Majesty's forces for freedom across the world. The Armed Forces Covenant sets out the relationship between the nation, the government and the armed forces. It recognises that the whole nation has a moral obligation to members of the armed forces and their families, and it establishes how they should expect to be treated. The Military Covenant states that in putting the needs of the nation and the army before their own, they forego some of the rights enjoyed by those outside the armed forces. In return, British soldiers must always be able to expect fair treatment, to be valued and respected as individuals, and that they and their families will be sustained and rewarded by commensurate terms and conditions of service. Why should one region accept anything less than that which is enjoyed by the rest of the United Kingdom? The Democratic Unionist Party are proud to support our armed forces and will accept nothing less than full implementation of the Armed Forces Covenant. At Westminster, Stormont and in local government, the DUP has sought to give a voice to those who have served our country. The greatest service that can be given in terms of recognition is to remove the barriers to the implementation of the Military Covenant for ex-servicemen and women. Within the present legal limits, DUP ministers have done their utmost to help military personnel, and that has been acknowledged in this House today. And certainly my colleague in another place, Edwin Poots, as the former minister, certainly has been acknowledged the work which he put in, and also other of my colleagues as well. That's within the present legal limits. Our party have met on numerous occasions with officials from the Northern Ireland office regarding the issue, and we will continue to seek all avenues available for supporting the armed forces. Today's motion is part of a wider debate on defending Her Majesty's Armed Services. The Government must ensure our defence budget be protected as much as possible. The very least that we should be doing is ensuring that they are fully equipped for battle, and for those that return from military service, that they are supported and given the opportunities in life they deserve. I thank the Honourable Member of Parliament for Tewkesbury for the update to the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee dated the 16th of June 2014, stating that 93% of the Cabinet measures has been extended to Northern Ireland, and that further work is being done to bring Northern Ireland into line with the rest of the United Kingdom. This must be continued, as the issue has not yet been settled once and for all. I firmly believe that Her Majesty's Government has a duty to support the armed forces and the veterans who have served their country so well, and my party is happy to work with ministers in pursuing this vital work. No political obstacle or no political party should get in the way of full implementation of the Covenant in every region of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland. Soldiers that reside in Northern Ireland serve the whole of the United Kingdom. The military covenant is not a devolved matter, therefore it should not be a postcode lottery whether they receive their entitlements. It should be equal support for all military personnel wherever they live within this United Kingdom. And could I say that I am sorry that we do not have any nationalist members or SDLP members taking part in this debate, because I will remember everyone in this House that whenever our soldiers defended us in the streets of Northern Ireland, I said taking part in the debate, not saying not present, because whenever our soldiers went out on the streets of Northern Ireland to protect us in those years of trouble, they did so for everyone. Everyone was equally protected, and many of our soldiers gave their lives and sacrificed their all to ensure the safety of the ordinary, decent people of Northern Ireland, wherever they came from, in very difficult circumstances, and many of them, as I said, paid the supreme sacrifice and price for their labours. You know, we in Northern Ireland know all too well the role our armed forces played. During Operation Banner, which was the longest continuous military deployment in British history, over 1,000 British Security Force personnel were murdered defending our province from terrorist attack. Tonight, in this debate, in the midst of this debate, while speaking about the military covenant, we honour the memory of all those who served, and in doing so, we demand the right of those military veterans from Northern Ireland to be upheld. Northern Ireland Armed Services personnel have fought in the same conflicts. They have suffered the same hardships. They have counted the same cost of loss of colleagues, family and friends. Therefore, they are due not only the respect that this House and this Government and Northern Ireland and the people of the United Kingdom has promised, they are due full implementation of the Armed Forces Covenant.